Over the last couple months, I've been lucky enough to interview some of our country's most established entrepreneurs and business owners about their origin stories. So where did they come from and how did they get to where they are today? Today's no different. Welcome to Origins Episode 3. Today I'm sitting here with Michael Lapps. Michael has been a CUB member for close to 3 years now. We've obviously developed a great relationship in the time that we've known each other. And Michael's someone that I consider to be not only one of the best marketers in the club, but probably one of the best marketers in Australia. And so I'm very excited to have you today. Why don't we start off with just, I guess, a brief, overview of the current business that you're operating?
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Calvin. Thanks for having me. So currently I'm the co-founder and strategy director at Yoga Digital, which is a digital marketing agency based here in Sydney. We kind of specialize in a few areas, being SEO and content, all things paid media, and then UX and conversion optimization. So we kind of really developed the agency to be very end-to-end and managing, campaigns that are not just designed to drive more traffic and build visibility, but ultimately actually grow someone's business.
Yeah, love the company and love what you guys are doing. But I think what today I'm interested in talking about is not the business, but actually how you got into that business. So the origin story, where did you start and how did you get to where you are today? So let's take it all the way back. I want to know what kind of a kid you were, what were you like in school? Let's start from there and we'll segue into how you got into business.
Yeah, so I think my mum always makes fun of this because she says that every single one of my report cards as a kid basically said exactly the same thing, which is Michael shows great promise, but needs to learn how to stop talking in class. And that has more or less been the same throughout my adult life. I think I was always the type of kid that had questions. I asked a lot of questions, and that was really annoying for some teachers because I would sometimes ask questions that they didn't necessarily have answers to. But I was always very curious. I was always very talkative and a little bit loud. And yeah, that remains the same.
I mean, did you have entrepreneurial tendencies in those early days? You often hear stories of entrepreneurs who kind of pulled flowers out of gardens and sold them to other people and those kind of things. Were you doing anything in business in those early days?
Kind of. As a kid, I always really loved animals. When I was growing up, when people used to say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I used to say a marine biologist because I really loved whales and that's what I wanted to do. And so when my dad's and mum's friends would come over, I would have taken out all my animal books and I had traced pictures of all the animals and colored them all in, and I would sell that to their friends for money. And that was my first business of how I got pocket money.
Yeah, awesome, mate. So yeah, I think that's a trend that we tend to see a lot in kids who end up becoming entrepreneurs. They have some sort of entrepreneurial tendencies as a kid. Were you academically strong, or was it something that you struggled with? Because you struck me as a guy who was always academically strong.
Depends on the subject. To my grandmother's extreme dismay, she was a math teacher. I was never that good at math. I think I'm okay at math, comparatively, generally speaking, but by her lofty Russian math teacher standards, I was horrific. But English, history, politics, international studies, I think that type of stuff always really interested me. I was always really interested in the world as a place and what my place in the world was. So I think that type of stuff really interested me and I excelled in those areas.
Yeah, I guess speaking of the world, once you finished your high schooling, where did you go from there? Did you travel or did you segue straight into university? What happened after high school?
No, so I decided I wanted to go straight into university. I knew what course I wanted to do and I got in, which was really lucky.
And what was that course?
I did a marketing degree at Monash University. So a business degree with a double major in marketing and management. And then after that, I decided that I really wanted to go and travel. And so I did 6 months through Europe with a group of friends, and it was a really formative experience for me. I'd traveled quite a bit before then. I was quite lucky, having grown up in Europe, that I traveled quite a lot with my family there. But doing 6 months with friends, kind of going from basically from west to east, and then into Morocco, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah, 100%. Awesome, mate. And so I guess you've spoken about the fact that you studied marketing, from the get-go. Did you always know that you wanted to be a marketer? Was that something that always interested you?
As a kid, I really wanted to do something with animals. That was always my thing. The problem with being a marine biologist is you really have to water and the open water. And as soon as I realized that I had a phobia of dark water and like just the open seas, probably not the best choice for me. When I realized I wanted to do marketing, actually my sister was in advertising. She's 12 years older than me. And I visited her in New York, where she was working for one of the world's biggest advertising agencies. And I went into their offices when I was like 14, and it blew. That was the moment. That was like the catalyst. Put it up on a pedestal. Yeah, 100%. Because she walked me through where the Nike team worked, and I was just like, I was so enamored almost immediately. I just fell in love with the energy, the vibe, what everyone was working on, and from that point on, I was hooked. It was just like adrenaline for me, and it still is like agency for me. I really love the energy and the excitement and.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's very interesting to me because I always like to, when I have these conversations, find that moment that sparked the interest for that person. And I think obviously for you, it was having that role model in your sister, and then obviously segueing into that environment and finding it as exciting as you did. That must have been the moment that flipped everything for you.
Totally, yeah.
And so what was your first, I guess, segue into marketing as a job and into it as a career?
Yeah, so I think I did okay in school marks-wise, not so much in university. And so when I graduated from university, I wasn't in like a graduate program or anything like that. So I was really out there job hunting, and I reckon I applied for like 70 or 80 different roles before someone kind of called me in for an interview. And then one of them finally landed, and it was just it was like a below the line advertising agency. So it was more like collateral and branding, that type of stuff. And I reckon I lasted like 5 or 6 months there before we mutually parted ways. And then I ended up getting a job in Sydney at a digital marketing agency, and that's where that whole love of digital and that growth really came from.
And so I suppose that was the time where you got to hone your skills and I guess learn the technical side of things. How long were you in that role for, and then how did you segue from there into running your own company?
So I was there for just shy of 3 years, and it was a really exciting place to work. There was about 45 staff. It was a very entrepreneurial business. They really encouraged people to kind of think laterally, think big, come up with ideas. And so I found my 2 business partners who also worked at that agency at the time, and one of them was responsible for hiring me there. And we just decided that we were going to give it a crack, because the worst thing that happens is doesn't work out, and then you go and get a job somewhere else, and you're even more employable because you've actually you have all this extra life experience. So yeah, that's how we
And how long ago was that now?
July 11th will be 7 years, so coming up on the 7 mark.
Quite the journey.
Absolutely.
Awesome, mate. No, well, and I guess just within the business, you've spoken about the fact that you do a full spectrum of marketing. Was that something that you had from the get-go? Is it something that you've built over time?
No, it was from the get-go. So between my business partners and I, we kind of all manage a different department. So we kind of launched with all of those services in mind, understanding that, again, if you're going to be managing the campaign for a customer, for a client, you need to actually be able to target a consumer at every part of the conversion funnel. You can't just be like, cool, well, we drove an extra 1,000 visits to your website. What does that actually mean? So we really wanted to make sure that we could manage every single part of the marketing function for them in order to be a successful agency.
Well, as I say, I think you've proven your success. You obviously work with some of the biggest brands in Australia. You've worked with some fantastic people in the club as well. And I know all of them speak volumes about the quality of your work. Just to finish off, could you give us one trait that you would, I guess, attest your success to, if you could pick one?
I genuinely don't think that I have any traits that other people do not. I don't think that I'm like special in any which way. I genuinely think that it just comes down to hard work and hustle. I think if you speak to most people who have had some level of success, I think, the old saying, like, the harder you work, the luckier you get. I think I'm just willing to put in hours that other people might not be willing to do, and just really push my own limits and my own boundaries. That requires sacrifice, but I think generally speaking, just like the hard work that goes into it, is I'm willing to push myself in that regard. And I genuinely think that that's pretty much the only major difference for me, is rolling the dice, having maybe a little bit of a lower risk, or of a higher risk tolerance rather, and then the hard work that comes off the back of that.
Hard work is the one thing that you can affect. You can't 100%. Affect a lot of things that happen in business, but your output is something that you can affect, and obviously that's proven in the success that you've gathered. And mate, thanks for coming today. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to seeing you around the club soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Calvin.